Every new Pokemon game and region has a Pokemon professor, and they always play an important role, like introducing you to the Pokemon world and giving you a starter. But there's one professor that plays a major role in not only their game and region, but in the Pokemon series as a whole. I'm talking about none other than Professor Oak. He was the very first Pokemon professor, and is definitely the most iconic. His profession is the relationship between people and Pokemon. And in Pokemon Red and Blue, he invented the first ever digital Pokédex. But of course, in his old age, he can't go around the region registering all the Pokemon himself, so he makes use of some brand new Pokemon adventurers, these 10-year-old kids, and tells them, hey, take this and fill up for me, would you? And of course, it may just seem like we're doing him a favor for him giving us a Pokemon, or that he's just using us. But when you think about it, there was a lot more to him asking us to complete the Pokédex. By doing that, he encourages the player to really focus on not only the training of Pokemon, but the discovery of new Pokemon. As the game's catchphrase always said, gotta catch 'em all. And Professor Oak definitely wanted you to catch 'em all. And in the actual game, Professor Oak really doesn't do too much. You see him in the beginning. He has his aides give you rewards throughout the region for catching a certain number of Pokemon, and if you go see him again, he evaluates your Pokédex for you. And then he appears at the end of the game, after you beat Blue, your rival in the Pokemon League, where he really roasts his grandson and tells him how much he sucks and why he sucks. And why he was beaten so easily and so quickly. But this old man, this wise old man, he knew what he was doing the whole time. He uses Red, he uses the player to teach his grandson a lesson, because he knew his grandson would not be able to get the most out of the Pokemon journey experience with the current mindset he had. Because believe it or not, Professor Oak knows a bit more about Pokemon training and Pokemon battles than he lets on. They don't really tell you outright how great of a trainer he was, but he really was. He was very renowned, in Kanto at least. And then he eventually became a renowned Pokemon professor and researcher. But what's cool is what was confirmed in a game called Pokemon Masters, which is a mobile Pokemon gacha game where you can get a bunch of the different Pokemon characters. It was pretty cool, but it's a gacha game, so I hate those. But what's cool is that you get some extra lore info about Professor Oak, and they pretty much confirmed that, you know how in the beginning of Pokemon Red and Blue, Fire Red Leaf Green, where it goes bum 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 bum, and you have the Gengar versus the Nidorino? Well, guess what? That is a battle between Professor Oak and his rival, Agatha, who is the Ghost Poison type Elite Four member in Kanto. Professor Oak has the Nidorino and Agatha has the Gengar. That's her partner Pokemon. Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? And then, there's also more lore drop that Professor Oak and Agatha became rivals because Agatha apparently tried to fight Professor Oak, even though Professor Oak was always a helpful guy and wanted to help her. She'd get annoyed by that, and so she'd always battle him, but he was always better than her. So he always beat her, and so they kept battling, and that was like their relationship until he eventually ended up retiring from battling. So he's stronger than an Elite Four member, who is still an Elite Four member in her old age. And again, they do not confirm what I'm about to say now, but it is heavily implied. Professor Oak was the champion of Kanto. He was the champion before he retired. It would explain why there is no champion when Blue gets there, and he just fights the Elite Four and becomes the champion. No one else was able to claim the spot after Oak left. It explains why Professor Oak is able to enter the Hall of Fame. Him being a Pokemon trainer in the past supports this. And the secret hidden battle that you can do in Pokemon Red and Blue or Red and Green, whichever one it was. There's a hidden event that you can hack and have happen where you fight Professor Oak, and he has a full team. They gave him a full team and everything. It's a full battle. So they originally planned for you to be able to fight Professor Oak, either in the post game or something. And that idea was later used and inspired Pokemon Sun and Moon, where you fight Professor Kukui as the champion at the end of the game. Professor Oak had the final starter that no one chose, and he used that along with another team of Pokemon, which he actually shared a lot of Pokemon with Blue, his grandson, like Gyarados, Arcanine, Exeggutor. So all signs point to Professor Oak being the Kanto champion. Professor Oak was not just any old professor, man. Like, he was heavily involved in the Kanto region and in that game. He also completely stole the spotlight from Professor Elm in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Gold and Silver. You know, he completely stole the spotlight. Professor Elm doesn't even welcome you to the Pokemon world in that game. Professor Oak does. And then you meet Professor Oak early game as well. And, you know, he hosts like a radio show, so he's even more popular than he was 3 years ago. And then, of course, he's iconic in the fucking anime where he does poems, and he has those bits where, like, he talks about the Pokemon and then the Pokemon fucking attack him. Fucking hilarious. Professor Oak has even inspired other characters. Like, there's little, like, carbon copies. He has an Alolan form in Samson Oak, which is apparently his, what is it, his cousin, I think? Like, he literally has an Alolan form. Alolan Professor Oak. Like, what the fuck? He's a much bigger character than just the guy who gives you your starter. Just the guy who welcomes you to the Pokemon world in the beginning. Like, you know, like, the professors have been more involved in future games. Like, Professor Rowan is more involved in the story, and then so is Professor Juniper, and then, you know, Kukui as well. Sada and Turo end up being the villains, even though they kind of are and aren't at the same time. That it's very scrolling about. It sucks. It's very weird. So yeah, like the professors have been more important in other games, but Professor Oak represents something special. Professor Oak represents what we become by playing Pokemon. He is somebody who's already went through his own Pokemon journey and now wants to help younger people out on theirs. He's a legendary trainer, a Pokemon expert, someone who wants to better the world, and someone who cares deeply for people and Pokemon and the bond that exists between them. That is what the player becomes after every single Pokemon adventure they take. Professor Oak is a symbol of what the games want, of how the games want to affect us. That is what I believe. I truly believe that. Like, I know, because I'm gonna, you know, I'm sure at some point I'll be introducing kids to Pokemon and showing them everything, teaching them everything, being there to guide them as they go along their own Pokemon journeys, whether it's my kids, you know, nieces, nephews, whoever that may be, you know, little cousins. I would love to show anybody younger than me Pokemon, because it truly is a special series. It truly is a special world. You know, Professor Oak teaches us that, again, Pokemon's not just about Pokemon battles. You know, it goes deeper than that. It's about the bond, you know. It's about Pokemon being your friends, your partners, your team, not just the tools for battle, which directly counterparts, right? Giovanni and Team Rocket. That's the whole story of Kanto. Team Rocket and Giovanni want to use Pokemon as tools to take over the world, tools for battle, and they don't care how they get their hands on powerful Pokemon to do it. Professor Oak is the complete opposite. He's the counterpart. He shows us that and teaches us that they're our friends. You know, it's built on trust. Pokemon aren't just caught. They choose to be caught. Unless, right, unless they make the Master Ball. You know, the Master Ball forces you to get caught, but that's why there shouldn't be a lot of those being made. But the Master Ball is also just kind of it's more of a gameplay mechanic, you know? But in story, it's, you know, something that shouldn't exist, but it does. And that's what Giovanni was trying to get from the Silph Company. He was trying to get the Master Ball so he can take it and use it. and catch a powerful Pokemon without worrying. So yeah, you know, just like Professor Oak's poems, it's very poetic. It really makes sense. So that's why Professor Oak is more important than you might have realized. And I would love to hear what he has, or just Pokemon has in general, taught you along your journey. Feel free to share.
That old coot hasn't taught me shit. He wouldn't even let me use my bike anywhere I wanted. Oak's words echo in your head. Don't do that. Don't do this. When the fuck did he ever say these words? I've never heard them, ever.
Ricky, that was just put in there to stop you from doing things in the game, man. It's not that deep.
Not that deep, huh? Well, I can say the same about this video. Why even make it? It's a fucking video game. Do something better with your life.